Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast, where our goal is simple: to learn from the best and discover how we can all live a better life, build a more fruitful business, and be more productive. Join us each week as we interview fellow entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and leading experts to discuss everything from marketing secrets to new technology and life as an entrepreneur.
Hello, and welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Sonnenberg, and I hope that you have been enjoying the relaunch of the podcast. Last week, we launched the Dan Sullivan podcast, which was excellent, and we talked about scary times. And we also released an episode with an extremely interesting person, Yael Eisenstadt, who is really big in how data is influencing our election integrity, among other things. And she's an ex-CIA officer. So if you haven't listened to those, I would definitely recommend doing that. Today, we have not just one, but we have two incredible guests that you may have heard of. They are good friends of mine, and that is Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank and Mark Timm. They just released a book that we're going to go deep on. Just to give a little bit of background on why this was so special, most people know Kevin for his role as one of the original sharks on Shark Tank. I actually first met Kevin through Joe Polish and through Genius Network. I had a pitch. I was on a TV show which pitches people. I'm not allowed to mention which one, but I was lucky enough to have Joe introduce me to Kevin, and Kevin picked up the phone and did a 45-minute call with me just from an intro with Joe. And I was really just blown away on how generous Kevin was giving his time to someone he had no idea anything about. I was preparing for the pitch for months, and I had some really amazing people to help. Joe Polish was helping me, Jay Abraham. Of everyone's advice that I got, Kevin really had some interesting out-of-the-box thinking that no one else was really giving to me. Also, you might have known Kevin as an inventor of the infomercial and the creator of As Seen on TV. And he just wrote a book co-authored with Mark Timm. Mark and I have been friends for years through Lee Richter, and Mark is a serial entrepreneur. He's built many businesses over a dozen countries across basically every industry, and he's been involved from retail to wholesale to manufacturing and digital marketing. He actually started his first retail gift company out of his garage and grew it to 8 figures. He's the number one supplier of its kind in North America. So really, really exciting episode. They've just released a book, and it's called Mentor to Millions. And Kevin is known for being one of the best business mentors out there, and he's placed a huge value on the mentor-mentee relationship. Mark has been a mentee to Kevin throughout his career, and they've both gotten so much value out of the relationship. They decided to write this book together, and coincidentally, they connected actually because they both considered Zig Ziglar to be mentors of the both of them. One thing that I absolutely love about these guys is that they've truly unlocked this concept of exponential growth. You'll hear in the episode, there's actually a clip from the book that I referenced where Mark was making fun of Kevin for literally having no calculators in his house that had plus signs, only multiplication signs. So I was lucky enough to get an early release copy of the book, and I really enjoyed everything about the book, especially knowing these guys, being able to hear their story, really dissect the way that they think. And I think that that's really one of the biggest takeaways is these guys think differently. They're not just doing the typical thing and trying to get by. I mean, these guys are thinking outside of the box. You could kind of just drop them off in any type of situation. My impression is that they'd just be able to figure out how to make a business out of something and survive. Not just survive, but thrive. The book covers everything from exponential growth to balancing work and family to dealing with failure. It's definitely a must read, one of the top books I've read this year. I'm predicting it's probably going to be one of the best business books of 2020. We've included a link to this in the show notes, so be sure to check it out. And let's get to the episode and hear what Kevin and Mark have to say. Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. Today's guests are my good friends, Mark Timm and Kevin Harrington. And they've just released a book called Mentor to Millions, which I read. I really appreciated reading it because I know both of you personally, and I got to learn a lot about both of you and such interesting stories and fascinating backgrounds and case studies in the book, and really loved it. So first of all, congratulations on the book. Really well done.
and feel like I know you a lot better. For what it's worth, I consider both of you to be mentors of mine. I mean, even though not official like advisors, mentors, but I mean, Kevin, I will always remember how gracious you were. Didn't know me from a load of wood. And, we get put in touch through Joe Polish. You give me 45 minutes of your time helping me prepare for a pitch. Mark, me and you have known each other, and I'll run ideas through you for over the years. So I think that the book is really important for people to read because mentorship is important, and paying forward is something that I've seen both of you exemplify kind of behind the scenes. So again, congratulations on the book. I have a whole list of questions that I won't be able to get through in a short period of time, but I have some burning ones, and I took a lot out of the book. So in no particular order, I would love to just fire hose you with some questions, both of you, about the book, about mentorship. But before even beginning with that, how are you both navigating COVID, and how are businesses doing? Has anything come up in terms of strategy or repositioning that would be interesting to kind of discuss and share right now?
I'll do a brief little quick overview. I mean, I think my business for the last 40 some years almost has been direct to the consumer and focusing on products and dealing with the consumers on a direct basis. And so when COVID hit, many companies, retail stores, other businesses, they had really a very limited, if not non-existent, direct to the consumer strategy. It's like if you own a retail store, you're like, well, people are coming in. I don't need to be direct to the consumer. I already have my customers. But guess what? When the stores are going to be closed because of COVID, customers can't come in. You should have had a direct relationship with those customers. So for me, it's just been double down on customer acquisition, getting more customers, utilizing new techniques to get them. Yes, I've used TV, but we use the internet, we use Facebook, we use fitness influencers with one of our companies, for example. And so had some challenges, others that have done very, very well.
How's it going for you, Mark?
I was very fortunate. I've been introduced as a serial entrepreneur. That just means that you've got multiple businesses that you're working on. One of those businesses was e-commerce. And man, I couldn't have been in a better spot at a better time. We saw our e-commerce business saw this happening before we did. We started seeing sales going up and up and up. And then all of a sudden everything was public. And our e-commerce business is up 500% year over year and growing. And we're like crazily trying to prepare for the fourth quarter. So people are staying at home, they're shopping during quarantine, but they didn't change that habit. And so our sales haven't really dipped now that people are out and about. And we happen to also do something. Kevin taught me something awesome as a mentor. He used to always say, I follow the eyeballs. Okay. So the eyeballs
I have that as a note.
Internet. They started looking
at the book.
Yeah. Well, and so they started following eyeballs. And then he's like, so the first thing I do is follow the eyeballs. Then I look at what habits are people doing in those and where they're looking. And so eyeballs were on e-commerce, but then habits were people weren't wanting to go to the doctor. They weren't wanting to go anywhere. So we started getting products that help people take care of themselves instead of going to the doctors. Now, not medicine. I'm not talking about FDA regulated. I'm talking about bumps and bruises and hurts and harms that they can care for at home. So we put ourselves in the e-commerce, and then we put ourselves in the path of people saying, if I can take care of myself at home, I'm going to. And those products are up 1,000, 2,000%. Muscle cramp products, boom. Antiseptic product to help you with sinuses. Nobody wants to even go outside if they've got the sniffles. So if you can help them with their sniffles, that's awesome. So those kind of products are just exploding right now, and we're right in the middle of them. I'm super excited. I got involved with Kevin because I never had a business go over $10 million. I now have my first business that's well on its way to $100 million. And I realized my thinking, it was what was keeping me back from being above that was my frame of mind, my mindset. Kevin helped me blow that up, and now sky's the limit.
Well, one of the things I recall from the book was Kevin's teaching you about exponential thinking and how on his calculator, he's not looking at plus signs. It's just multiplication signs. I love that part of the book.
You said it almost right. It's not that he's not looking. I swear, Kevin doesn't have a plus sign on his phone. He has AT&T take it off before he'll take it home. He doesn't do linear, man. Dude only does exponential. If 1 times 1 doesn't equal 100, he taps out. And so most of us are okay with just adding a little. Kevin's looking for multiplication, not just in business, but in relationships. Our relationship is a multiplier. You've introduced us to other people. We've helped you. You've helped us. That's an exponential relationship. And that happens in mentorship. And we literally, the book is called Mentor to Millions, not because of millions of dollars. It's millions impacted. The fastest way to impact 1 million people is through mentorship, but you do it exponentially.
So would you say, Mark, that if you could pick one thing that you've gotten from your mentorship, mentee kind of relationship working with Kevin, is it the exponential thinking, or is there something else that you would say is like the number one thing that you've gotten from the relationship?
I would tie scale and exponential thinking. What I learned from Kevin is that I can only take something so far, that if I don't surround myself with a dream team that is capable of taking it to that next level, then I've sold myself short. Kevin told me one time, I would rather have 10% of an accountant that is a $100 million thinker than 100% of an accountant that's $1 million thinker. And most entrepreneurs only hire who they can afford. And so if you surround yourself with $1 million thinkers, guess what? You're doing $1 million. If you surround yourself with $100 million thinkers, guess what? You're doing $100 million. I'm still the same guy. I still live in the same house. I still drive the same vehicle, still have the same kids. But I surrounded myself with Kevin Harrington and his friends and people he introduced me to. I started thinking $100 million. And now I'm on my way to $100 million. That's not an accident. That is mentorship at its finest.
So you both had the common mentor of Zig Ziglar, right? Who's now, sadly passed away. Kevin, who would you consider to be your mentor now?
Zig Ziglar was a mentor, years ago, probably 20 some years ago. But that's how Mark and I met. Zig was a mentor to Mark, and Zig was a mentor to me. And when Tom Ziglar and Zig had passed away, realized the two of us should be talking about business, and he introduced us, and then we ended up becoming the mentor-mentee situation. But we also, above and beyond that, ended up getting into a few business deals together. So, I had an opportunity to hang out with Richard Branson for a couple of days and get some great advice from him. And so I have some personal finance mentors that, assist me with investing and in not only, just safe places to invest your money, but riskier and stock picks and things like this. So I'm a marketing sales guy. I need help in other areas that are not as firsthand to me. So from finance to operations to legal, I have a couple of full-time legal people as part of my team kind of thing, but they do more than just legal work. They really perform some mentoring type services along the way. And then I also have a guy that I've been involved with for 30 years or so. He's a $7 billion hedge fund guy that, it's like I'm on the edge of making a big decision. Don't invest, et cetera, et cetera. Here's a guy that I always have a little run up the flagpole kind of conversation with in many of these big situations. So I've got some really strong people, part of my team. And one of the things that we talk about in the book was a finance mentor that I got way back that helped me raise capital. He took me into a bank that had turned me down and got me a $3 million line of credit. And so I was convinced way back that getting the right people like that in my life could be invaluable.
Right. And you talk about the dream team concept throughout the book, which, is exactly what you're talking about here. Talking about operations, which is what I'm passionate about. One of the really interesting parts of the book that I found was the Operations Fiasco that was part of the case study in the Babson College, with something around like how the shipping was going on, or that you stopped doing a product, but it was still getting shipped. Would you mind sharing briefly? And I don't want to spoil kind of all the stories in the book.
When we first started importing goods on our own, in the earlier days, we would buy the goods from domestic suppliers. They had already been imported. All the heavy lifting was done. They were sitting in a warehouse somewhere in the United States. So like Ginsu knives, for example, they came out of Toledo, Ohio. And I was just buying them from them right there out of Toledo. Not a challenge. When we got into other items that were coming direct from China, like these hand-hammered Chinese woks, we were bringing in woks, but I didn't have the capital to pay for them in advance, because the way that works, you place an order. I needed 40,000 woks. So I placed an order for 40,000. Well, they want to be paid 100% for all 40,000 up front, because they're going to go buy the raw materials, make them, and ship them. So they want to make sure they're doing all of that and they're getting paid. So I didn't have the capital. These were costing me $10 a piece. I needed 400 grand. This was back in the 80s. It's like, where am I going to get $400,000, right? So make a long story short, though, we had asked for them to be shipped the cheapest way possible. They're like, how do you want these brought into the country? I want them to, bring them in the cheapest way possible. Well, there's two problems with that. One is the cheapest way takes 2 to 3 weeks longer. That's why it's cheaper. They use slower boats and they don't come direct. And then secondly, I found out that the cheapest way was on the top of the ship. So that water spray could sometimes affect the quality of the boxes and the product when it arrived. So make a long story short, we had all kinds of issues with product supply, et cetera, fulfillment, were we getting them on time, et cetera. And we were dealing with lots of different issues until we got some of the right people in place to help us with these problems.
One of the things that I took from the book, you have to read this book because there's a lot of different stories and you get something out of all of them. But one thing that was one of the golden threads for me was how resourceful both of you are. But a lot of these stories, really it came down to, like, you talk about meeting Trump and the story of how you were able to get yourself into the room with Trump to pitch him on something. I mean, it's a lot of creativity and resourcefulness that really was what seemed to move a lot of these things. Or the story of going through your bag, like on a flight together, you pulled out like 1,000 magazines and were like ripping things out, because it's that whole concept of following the eyeball. So really what I was most impressed with was some of the resourcefulness that both of you exemplified in the stories.
And I want to touch on that. It's not just resourcefulness, but it's not being afraid to fail. When people sometimes say, what do you look for in a mentor? And I think the first question you should ask them is not what are your successes, but tell me about your failures. Because if you're willing to fail, and Kevin's motto is fail fast, fail cheap. And so, so if you're willing to fail and you learn from each of those failures, that's part of what takes a little bit of that, resourcefulness and takes it to the next level. Because what it is it's pivoting and it's being willing to fail and then come back to it, again and again. And that's one of the reasons why Babson College is still teaching to this day, 30 years later. That case study you were talking about, that was in all rights, that was considered a failure. But how Kevin came up out of the ashes there and turned it into one of his biggest successes is why they made it into a case study, and it's why they still teach it today. If it was just about Kevin Harrington, the successful entrepreneur, it may have made it a year, 2 years, maybe 3 at the most. But because it was about failure that we can all relate to and how he became stronger and better because of failure, that lesson is just as real today, maybe even more relevant today than it was 30 years ago. So being willing, half the stories, Nick, in the book are about failure, because it's about being able to fail. Zig, our mentor, used to say, nobody drowns from falling in water. They drown from staying in the water. Okay, you're going to fall. You just don't stay there. You get a mentor that will reach down and pull you up and say, all right, what'd you learn from that? Guess what? Don't do that again. Okay, let's move on from that and learn from it. So that's a lot of the lessons that I learned from Kevin is about his failures, not just about his success.
Well, it really resonates with me because both of you know my story, and coming back from hardship is something that I really respect because I've lived through it as well. Back to Trump, just curious, Kevin, what was it like pitching Trump? And not to get into politics, because I don't care about the politics side, but just from a pure business standpoint, what was that experience like?
This was 1988. So it was 32 years ago, number one. Okay. Trump was just a great, successful businessman at the time. Controversial even back then, by the way. But I got a challenge from folks in my office that they were having a hard time getting through to, they were outbound telemarketing people, and the secretaries were shutting them down because they're trying to get to the decision makers. And I said, look, I can get to anybody anytime. Give me a couple days notice and I'm there, And I think I might have been, I think I said maybe it might take me a week. And so someone said, oh, okay, so you can get a meeting with Donald Trump in the next 5 days. And so that's how it all came about. I didn't even have anything to pitch him at the time. And so I had to first come up with, what am I going to pitch him? How am I going to get in to pitch him? And how is it all going to work? But to make a long story short, we were running a program at the time, an infomercial back in the 80s, how to make money in real estate with no money down, right? So I said to myself, wait a minute, Trump's new book is called The Art of the Deal. And this is one of the greatest real estate guys in the world. I've got a real estate program I'm selling that's probably nowhere near the power that a guy like Donald Trump, runs around with. So I reached out. First, I couldn't get through to Trump through his assistant. She's like, nope. So I said, you got to get creative. I went to the guy that had written his book, Tony Schwartz, and so it was the two of them had written the book together. And I said to Tony, I said, hey, you don't know me. I'm the As Seen on TV guy. I've got an infomercial running on making money in real estate. We want to offer Donald's book as an upsell. We may need as many as 1 million copies of that book if we're successful. And then boom, right away, he makes $2 or $3 a book. Okay. And he's thinking, wait, did you say 1 million? I said, yeah, we sell millions of the things, 5 million of these, 2 million of these, 3 million of these, 10 million of those. So, and he said, well, what do you need? I said, well, I'd want to be able to sit down with you and Donald and go through this because this is exciting. If you want to go on, I'm the As Seen on TV guy. Send him some information. Boom. About an hour later, he's like, when can you be in New York? And I'm like, what for? He's like, to meet with Donald. And I'm like, okay, I can be there. It was a Tuesday. I said I could be there on Thursday. And boy, I went up there on Thursday and pitched him. So, the funny thing is one of the things as I'm walking into his office, and he'd been screaming the whole time before because I was sitting outside of his office waiting for him. And I go walking in and he points his finger at me and he starts screaming at me. And he says, kid, he said, I don't know what you're here to pitch me. He said, I don't know if I'm even interested, but before you sit down, if I said yes to whatever pitch you've got, how much of my time is this going to take? And what's my upside potential? Because if you don't have the right answer, you're not going to sit down. You're going to get the hell out of my office.
And
so that was Donald Trump. Right? Like, Donald, hey, it's great to meet you too. And I'm Kevin Harrington. And let me tell you, I'm going to need 4 hours of your life, and I'm willing to pay you $4 million. And he sat there for a few seconds, and then said, all right, sit down. Okay. And I spent an hour with him, by the way. Unbelievable. Yeah. He was touring me all through his offices and all the articles on the wall and the pictures. And yeah, Donald Trump definitely has a good size ego, and we hung out for an hour and talked, and he said, yeah, you want to do it? Let's do it. So it's a long story what happened from there, but I got in, pitched him, and shook hands to do a deal.
It's pretty brash, how much of my time and what's my upside. It makes sense, but you were one of the original sharks on Shark Tank. You've seen a lot of pitches. You've pitched a lot of people. How were the quality of his questions, or how was that interaction? Was he looking at things or asking questions that other people weren't? Or, what was that experience like for that hour?
As you said, it's a little brash, how much of my time and what's my upside. But when you think about it,
makes sense.
When I get done with this podcast, I've got 32 things that I've got to do, right? Which ones am I doing first? I'm not going to take the ones that have zero potential to do anything, and focus on those. I'm going to focus on the winners, right? So it gave me a way to look at deal flow and how to prioritize deal flow because, there's sometimes, hey, you get a call from your wife, that takes priority over the $10 million deal that you might be doing. So you've got to handle certain things. But in a prioritization standpoint, the guy was brilliant. And from that standpoint alone, I say this was a great lesson learned. But at the end of the day, I was asking him to do an infomercial, and there was only one problem. He didn't want to go and be the pitch man on TV of this infomercial because he said, oh, yeah, I can surely probably get attacked by a lot of the media if I'm hawking my own real estate product on television, like those late night hucksters, right? So, I mean, he said, I'll give you the rights to my products, but I'm not going to be a guy sitting there hawking it all night long on TV. So it was a little bit of a challenge for me. But anyway, we had a very fruitful meeting, and I was pleasantly surprised that for what started out to be a very rough and tumble start off could have gotten really nasty, but it ended up in a great finish when it was all said and done.
And how old are you? Around 30 years old or something at the time?
Yeah, I was right around 30. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, impressive at 30 years old to be able to handle yourself like that and be able to go up to someone that famous while they're that brash and be able to hold your composure and then, get through an hour in a positive way. I mean, that's really impressive.
I love challenges. I smoked a cigar with Bill Clinton right across the street from the White House at the Hay House Hotel when he was president of the United States also. So, I mean, it's like, this was a private meeting, me and a couple guys with Bill Clinton, given, he wanted some entrepreneurial excitement one week and called a friend of his to get a couple entrepreneurs together. And I got chosen to go hang out with Bill Clinton. So every day's a new day, from the Trumps to the Clintons to the, to the Richard Bransons down in Necker Island or whatever. I've had a lot of fun with a lot of people. And I think you gain from each of those interactions across the board.
Where do you suggest people go to find their mentor? I know in the book you had mentioned certain mastermind groups. If someone's listening right now and they're not necessarily in a mastermind group, what should someone do right now?
When I focused on finding a finance mentor in my life, I was sitting there with my checkbook and I'm like, who do I write a lot of checks to? I have an accounting firm. I pay them a lot of money. I have a legal firm. I have a media company. I have a fulfillment company. I have all these suppliers and I write checks to, right? Well, that's the first place to start. These are people that should be loyal to you because you're sending them money. So my accountants, hey, I need a good CFO. I need a good finance guy, lawyers, this, that, whatever, suppliers. Everybody has connections. So I say the first thing you do, who are you in business with? Who are your partners? Who are your suppliers? Who do you write checks to? That's your inner circle. Go to them first because, hey, who's better to maybe give you a reference on a great finance guy than your auditors and your accounting people? And believe it or not, they weren't the ones that got me my finance guy. And that's why I love saying, go to other people, because sometimes I had a girl that owned her own media company. She was buying millions of dollars of media for me a year. And she said, so Kevin, you need a finance guy? What for? I said, to grow the business. She says, oh, you mean if you grow the business, I'll get more media from you? So yeah, let me go to work on that. And by the end of the day, she had like 3 names for me. It was amazing. So incentivize the people to help you by showing them that it's going to benefit them in the process. But that's step one. That's how I got my finance guy, through my initial connections. But I also, you said it, membership programs and the Joe Polish's Genius Clubs and the board of advisors, Mike Calhoun, and these kinds of folks that have these events and have these opportunities. These are great places also to be hanging, looking for the right kind of people.
Again, thank you so much for being on the show today. Congratulations on the book. I hope everyone listening right now goes and buys it and reads it. A few other things just to wrap this up that I really got out of the book. The story of the CDs that you added on top of that gym equipment product, Tony Little's product. That was just freaking brilliant. And Mark, how you started running your family like a business and what you were able to accomplish, not just in your business life, but family life. I think that there's so much that people can take from those lessons and stories while they're reading this book. It's not just about business, like you have family life, you have your work-life balance. So the way that you were able to integrate everything is extremely impressive to me, and kudos to you for that.
Hey, Nick, those that are out there, we have a great arrangement for them. When they buy the book, Mentor to Millions, which they can go to kevinmentor.com, there's $1,000 worth of giveaways there, including a 30-day free mentoring program that Mark and I give to the folks. So It's an amazing deal. $18 for a book, 30 days of free mentoring. We do some live training and coaching during that also, and some other downloads and giveaways, $1,000 plus worth of giveaways, just by picking up an advanced copy of our book. So kevinmentor.com. Mark, I don't know if you have any last words of wisdom to throw on there, but
no, man, you nailed it. We want everybody. The reason we pick 30 days, Nick, is because 30 days to form a new habit.
Yep.
We want everybody to form a habit of mentorship. If you're out there and you're listening and saying, I need a mentor, I want a mentor, there's a trifecta approach. You got to find the right mentor, then you got to be their best student, and then you got to take what you've learned and teach someone else. That's the trifecta. You do those three things, and we inspire you to do those three things in the book, and then sit back because the fireworks are getting ready to start. So go to kevinmentor.com. Let's get it started today.
Cool. And the book is already out on Amazon right now. It's officially coming out. It's the official launch end of the month, but you can pre-order it right now. Is that how it's working?
Right now.
Okay.
Pre-order now, September 22nd. It's live.
Gotcha. Well, we'll include a link to that. What is it? One more time?
kevinmentor.com.
kevinmentor.com. We'll include that in the show notes. We'll be promoting this to our list and our audience. But thank you so much for joining us today. Always awesome to catch up with you guys.
Take care.
Thanks a lot.
What an inspiring chat. I think that just goes to show you how valuable it is to have a mentor. No matter what you're doing, you should always try to find someone that can help guide you and avoid obstacles. It's just so valuable, especially as a business owner, and especially living during this pandemic and coronavirus with all the changes. It's just especially important to have a mentor that can help you grow. And speaking of growth, if you need help growing your business, you can come and check out what we're up to at Leverage. We help small to medium-sized businesses grow by improving their top and bottom lines. That means focusing on your top line, which would be your revenue, and internal workings of your business, which would be the bottom line. We take a high-level approach with each business by analyzing everything you're doing, figuring out the best way for you to grow right now, and then having our team execute all the action items. It's guidance, it's strategy, it's execution, all in one. It's like hitting the easy button and you get this extended team of marketing and operations experts at your service. If you're interested in learning more about Leverage, you can just head to getleverage.com/podcast/67. That's the link for today's episode. And you can fill out the form and we'll be in touch. We can have a chat about how we might be able to work together and help grow your business. And as always, if you like today's episode, we would really appreciate it if you would please rate and subscribe to the episode. And if you have specific questions or ideas for the podcast, you can input those at getleverage.com/podcast/67. We welcome your feedback. See you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Leverage Podcast from getleverage.com. Please let us know what you think. Rate and subscribe on iTunes. Leverage is an on-demand outsourcing platform that helps small business owners and entrepreneurs scale their business. We have experts that can help set up marketing and sales funnels, your email marketing, podcasts, social media creation, paid media, and much more. Grow your business overnight with a team of experts you can trust to deliver. Accomplish more. Visit getleverage.com.